All right, so today, let's see, I'm gonna share my screen, I guess, actually, sorry. All right, folks, Zoom, can you see my screen all right? All right, and I'm gonna do some moving. I can't see myself. Okay. So today the workshop is Markdown and Pandoc for academic writing. And the idea here, sorry, let me check the chat. Okay, great, thanks. The idea here is, actually learning Markdown is probably going to take like 1 minute or 5 minutes, but this is really just give you a deeper introduction into how writing in Markdown might kind of integrate into your academic writing and research type endeavors. And so with that in mind, let's just jump right into this intro page here. And what I wanted to do is take a step back and just kind of look at all the kind of tools that we use for academic writing. And when I'm saying academic writing, I'm really trying to mean something bigger than just articles, like your articles, your research, your notes, stuff that you create for classes, stuff that you put into learning management system. And so trying to look at all those tools that we use for writing all the stuff that we do in our scholarship and in our teaching and in the university in general, communication, and what are the tools that we use and how can we integrate a simpler workflow with plain text format, which is Markdown. And so generally, if you've submitted articles for majority of disciplines and journals, you end up spending a lot of time sending Microsoft Word docx files around. And so word processors is how a lot of folks have been doing a lot of writing, and how they collaborate over writing in the academics, but it's also not the only way that we can do that. And there's some simpler ways that might actually be really useful in this context. So word processors is the #1 tool that people use. Most common, obviously, is Microsoft Word, which in our campus, we have a license to use Microsoft Word, obviously. There's an alternative open source version type tool called LibreOffice, which is commonly used a lot of other places where you don't have that subscription. So that's nice because it's free and open source. There's obviously the collaborative cloud platforms like Google Docs, Proton Docs, Nextcloud, OwnCloud, or there's really academic focused platforms. And those ones you have to log in. They can be really great if all your collaborators also have that same tool and subscription, but can also, have some kind of limitations. So most times when you have to submit an article, you end up having to submit it as Microsoft Word. But just because it's really common doesn't mean that everybody knows how to use it. And also there's a lot of limitations because some people may not have access to that software depending on where you live in the world or what kind of computers folks use. And so I'm a kind of person who actually never learned how to use Microsoft Word, and it's actually really complicated and confusing. One of the things that always happens is when you're collaborating with people like paste things in and you get this weird formatting quirk and you can't get it out because there's some weird formatting in that WYSIWYG editor that you can't debug because you actually can't see the source of that document. You just see that visual editor. And so the formatting is all hidden behind that interface. And so it can be really difficult to work with that because it's saying, that interface is between you and the actual source code of that document. The other limitation on Microsoft Word, obviously, like I said, is a proprietary tool. It's linked to proprietary formats. meaning you have to have the paid for that piece of software, or in the current world, it's all subscription based, which can be a real limitation if you're collaborating with people outside of our campus. A lot of those platforms like Google Docs, it's also a proprietary platform. There's some maybe issues with privacy, security, and ownership. And so those can also be, a challenge. So we're talking about Markdown today, so I want to bring it back to that and say, one of the things is if people are asking for a docx file, you don't have Microsoft Word, or you don't care to work with Microsoft Word, you can still give it to them, because you can write it in Markdown, and you can use Pandoc to actually convert it into docx or other formats for sharing. And that's actually how I would normally do that. And it's almost easier to write. It is easier to write in the Markdown than it is to write in Microsoft Word. One other thing to note about the word processors is that it mixes the presentation and the content. And so a lot of times what happens when you start writing your article is you're like, oh, I'm going to start writing this. And then you're like, oh, I'm going to change the font. Oh, I'm going to change the size. And that's distracting you from actually writing. And so that's one thing that Markdown is not going to let you do, because you're not going to mess around with all that formatting and style, because that's actually a different part of the process. Those are separated. Content is separated from presentation in a plain text workflow. Document preparation systems. Most people in science and math will be very familiar with LaTeX. And this is a piece of software that actually goes back to the 1970s, the beginning of computing, really. And its aim was document design and typeset. And so really what it's trying to do is create things for print. And so LaTeX is really, really excellent at that. But it is really aimed at print. And it got integrated into academic writing because a lot of people need to present mathematical formulas in a very structured way, or chemical formulas. And LaTeX is really good at that now. And so it's integrated in physics and math. People often write their papers and their dissertations using LaTeX from the beginning. And so one of the things that LaTeX does, again, is it's going to separate out the actual just writing paragraphs versus styling the document and presenting it. And so you write a bunch of plain text code, and then you compile it using LaTeX to output a really beautiful print PDF. Now, one of the problems with that is that it is literally designed in the 1970s, and it is focused 100% on print. And so the PDFs that you generate are actually not that great for the digital world, like using that PDF digitally. They look really nice. The typeset's really good, but they're actually not accessible. They don't meet accessibility requirements. So that's one of the big challenges people are running into on campus, as we have to start having our folks meet all the accessibility requirements when you stick things into the learning management system and share them to your students. The PDFs that you create with LaTeX are not going to meet those requirements. And so that's kind of a challenge. There's some newer alternatives that are developing, like Typist, and LaTeX has a new version 3 that's going to be coming out that have a more modern approach, that have really focused on ensuring that the PDFs generated are accessible, but those are still kind of in the works. And so we'll try to look at some of how you can get around that, but you can also go take a look on, I have some links on this accessibility page, or on the resource page, has a bunch of stuff about dealing with accessibility in LaTeX and uploading that stuff to your learning management systems. So again, one of the nice things with Markdown is that we could actually write in Markdown, but we can use some of the powerful parts of LaTeX, like presenting math, doing the final layout of your print version. And so you can, again, Markdown is simpler to write than LaTeX, but you can use the power of LaTeX to generate outputs from that. The other one that most people are actually probably familiar with Markdown from is using it in code notebooks. And so when you have R Markdown, Jupyter Notebook, or some newer platforms like Quarto, they mix code blocks with Markdown blocks. And the idea is you're supposed to be able to kind of write your documentation, write your articles, write your analysis right into the same place where you're running all your code, which can be a really powerful and cool way to write your articles and do your research and work with other people and collaborate, where you can actually embed that documentation and analysis of what's going on directly in the code. And so these systems are already integrating Markdown. So again, it's going to be a good investment to learn a little bit of Markdown if you're going to use some of these. You want to extend the way that you use Jupyter Notebooks to be able to sort of almost publish with it. And so now we're jumping finally to Markdown. And Markdown is a lightweight markup language. And there's more than one out there that people use. And so lightweight markup languages are just supposed to be really easy to write and to read, while providing some semantic markup that can be transformed into content in different formats. And so some of the examples other than Markdown that you might be familiar with is WikiText. Like all of wiki websites are written using WikiText, which is very similar to Markdown. ASCII doc, restructured text, org mode, text style. There's just different standards essentially that are designed for creating other types of content, but in a very simple plain text way. And so what's cool about markup language or lightweight markup languages is they're pretty easy to learn because they're like smaller subsets of things. They're plain text, meaning it's not a proprietary format. It's just a text file, which means on your computer, you have two kinds of files. You have plain text files or binary files. So all your images and PDFs and docx's and things are binary files. They require a specific kind of viewer to be able to open them and make sense of the data that's inside of it. Whereas a plain text file, all the bits in that file represent characters. And so all your code, all your HTML, and a lot of other things on your computer are plain text files. They can be opened by any text editor, and that's the basis of early computing. And it's just very simple, preservable, and open kind of standard. There's no license, but it's also still human readable. So if you open up a PDF and at the file level without a PDF viewer, you can't understand anything in it. If you open up a plain text file at the file level, you can still read it. You don't need to render Markdown to make it usable. It's still totally readable. And then the other opportunity there with all of these markup languages is the idea of separating that content from the presentation. So you want to just write your content. I want to write my paragraphs and headings and things. I don't want to waste my time formatting the look and feel of it until the end. And so that is makes your writing more powerful because you can use, if you do a good job of semantically marking up your content, then you can change it all via CSS or LaTeX and change the entire look and feel and the theme that those contents are exported as in the outputs. Versus if you were in Microsoft Word and you just like highlighted some things and changed the fonts and changed the font size, that actually isn't semantically marking it up. It's just marking up the style, which means that if you wanted to make a change to that and make a different type of output, you'd have to go and manually do that over and over again. And so the idea then is if you have this marked up content where it's semantically marked up, then you can export it in a whole bunch of different ways from a single source. So you can export it to the web, to an ebook, to a PDF, all from one file. And so I have an article, just as an example here, there's an article, and this person is writing about using Git version control system in their academic article. And then it's kind of interesting because then you can actually see that repository right here, which is writing it in Markdown and then exporting it into LaTeX and then exporting the LaTeX into the PDF, which gets published on the web. So it's just kind of a neat example of somebody doing that full workflow. So now focusing in on Markdown itself. Markdown is a quick and simple standard to create formatted documents in plain text. And it was originally developed in 2004 by John Gruber and Aaron Schwartz, who a pretty famous character, was also involved in that. And it was really based on the idea of like how you just write an email intuitively. It's supposed to be very simple, very easy to read, but then it's designed to convert into HTML so that you can put it on the web. So all the Markdown files are plain text. They usually have the extension .md, and they can be edited by any text editor. So you think about that Markdown file as a source code for your document, and then you can take that source code and you could just read it as a Markdown file, or you can compile it to generate all kinds of other outputs using different tools. So you can output it as HTML, a docx, or a PDF. And because Markdown is quite simple and very flexible, all kinds of websites, note-taking apps, code notebooks, and publishing systems are now using Markdown to format the content. And so that makes it a really powerful and cross-platform option where it's going to be useful to learn it because all kinds of places use it. And there's all kinds of applications in the research and publishing ecosystem which are using Markdown now. So just to give you an idea of what that looks like, here's the demo. And so if we look in this box right now, this is what raw Markdown looks like. You can still read it. It's got a hash and there's a heading, and then this is like some paragraph and some formatting going on here. But then the point is really not to just like read this. The point is to render that into HTML. So if I click this, that code looks like this in HTML. So we got a heading 1, some paragraph with some various highlighting or different inline elements inside, a footnote, heading 2, an image, lists, ordered list, block quote, horizontal rule, and there's that footnote. So that's really all the basics of what you would need to do to write an academic paper are right there in this. We kind of instinctually start formatting academic papers or books using these semantic concepts, that there's headings. The top heading, the biggest heading in any article is probably the title. We break our content up into smaller groups using subheadings, and those subheadings are hierarchical. You have a heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, then maybe you jump back up to a heading 2 and another heading 3, and so on. That's how you form your table of contents in any kind of article or dissertation or book. So those kind of semantic markings and breaking up that text into different parts is something that instinctually we do. And when we read a book and look at a print paper, we can understand what those mean by how they're styled differently. And so the idea here is, rather than just going into our article or into our word processor and where we want this thing to be bigger and bolder, on our word processor, we might just say, okay, I want it to be font size 20 and bold and a different font. On Markdown, what we're going to do is, rather than doing that, we're just going to mark it semantically as a heading 1. And that means that actually semantically is the biggest heading on the page. And so however we render it, we'll render it, that presentation, to be the biggest heading on the page, which makes it really powerful because we can apply all kinds of different styles to that when we get to the presentation. So looking at that, we're going to start just writing some Markdown here together. And I just want to walk through kind of the basics. And so, like I said, we kind of instinctually do this. The elements that we usually write with in academic documents are going to be the headings, the paragraphs, and the lists. And then what we're going to do now is just mark those with our Markdown, explicitly tagging it using this standardized syntax. And really what Markdown is just conventions about how we're going to formally mark the structure, semantic structure of our paper or our writing while keeping it really simple. And so you can do some testing of these by going over to, I built a little editor in here that you could just write some Markdown in here. Or you could go over to Dillinger, which is a little bit more fully featured Markdown editor. You'll see some of these. You don't need a Markdown editor for anything. But these can be helpful if you aren't used to writing Markdown, because it'll have Markdown here on the left, and then it's showing you rendered what it's going to look like in HTML on the right. And so you can see what your document is going to look like. Now, once you get used to it, you won't kind of really need that preview all the time, and it can be just kind of distracting from what you're doing. And so when, like, from your writing, so you probably don't necessarily need a Markdown editor itself once you actually get started in your practice. But this can be useful just to see and experiment with learning all of the conventions in Markdown when you're getting started. So the first thing that I'm actually going to jump down to the bottom, and I just want to reiterate one more time the idea of the semantic markup. So in this page, I have kind of the quick reference of all the basic elements that you might want to use. And then as you get down to the bottom, I have some notes about Markdown flavors, which I'll talk about in a bit. And then some notes about this concept of semantic markup versus just the style. And so it's really important to remember when you're writing in Markdown or some other kind of light markup language or other markup language, what we're trying to do is semantically tag our text content, telling what is the actual meaning of this little bit of text, what is its function within the larger text. And so rather than just styling what it looks like, what we're doing is we're marking it to have a specific function, a heading, inline functions, and like lists and things like that. And so the advantage of that is that we want to separate out that semantics from the actual presentation, which makes it easier for you to write. And it also makes it more powerful for creating your outputs. And so to do that, we're going to actually split up our content into different parts. And so we're going to use headings, and we'll jump back up to the top here. And so the first thing that we're going to have in our Markdown is some headings. And so, you typically would have these kind of, if you imagine the table of contents in your paper, you have kind of the title, you have like chapter 1, and then you have all these subsections inside of your chapter. And you would mark those off with headings. And so in HTML, we mark those headings from heading 1 to heading 6, going down in importance. So heading 1 is the most important, heading 6 is the least important heading in your content. And you use those to break up all of your content into meaningful parts that somebody can actually read. And so in traditional books, there's not that many headings. In academic articles, we start adding a lot more headings. And in writing on the web, we add a lot more headings because the way that people read on the web, they need it to be almost summarized and broken up into much smaller bits than if you were reading in a book. So headings are your friend. They're really useful. And you want to make your headings actually meaningful and descriptive of the content that you're writing. And so let's take a look at what that looks like in this little demo editor. I just did a Control-A to select all the text that was there, and I deleted it. And so I want to have my heading 1 is going to be a hash sign or a pound sign or number sign. What do people call that? No, hash. Okay, hash, and then space, and then we're going to call this like the title. And so in Markdown, that space, the white space, and the is really important. And so if we do it hash and then we didn't put that space, that's not going to be a header anymore. That's actually going to, I can render this and it's just going to render as regular text. Now, if I put that space in there and I render it, now it's a header, right? And so Markdown is really flexible and simple, but there is, you do need to get the little details right on the spacing and the white space. So here's my heading, my title of my paper. And then the next thing I might want in my paper is some paragraphs, right? And so, yeah, go ahead.
So very exciting, but to me the title looks kind of big. Is there a way I can vary the size?
Yeah, and so what's going to happen, so right here you're saying like this output looks too big,
Right.
and so that is all based on the styles of the style sheets of the HTML. And so we don't write any of that into our Markdown. We would write that into the HTML style sheet or the PDF style sheet, however we're going to convert it. And so that's kind of the key point is we're going to sort of not worry about that. And then we're going to worry about that in the second step when we do it. And so for a lot of people who write in LaTeX, I mean, they would be familiar with this, where you really don't write any sort of styles, and then you adopt a template for a certain article or a dissertation, and it just outputs it in the right way magically. And you're like, whoa, that's cool. And so that's kind of part of what we're trying to do is separate that whole, like, worrying about exactly what it's going to look like from the writing. And so first we're just going to write it, then we're going to spend more time later messing around with it. But the powerful part about that will be that we'll be able to say all the heading ones we want to be in a certain way, all the heading twos we want to be in a certain way, all the heading threes we want to be in a certain way. And so it gives us power to be actually transform the whole article into a whole bunch of different ways. And so that's a really good point, is that we just kind of, we're not going to mess around with that today really. And part of it is that we're trying to like separate those two things out. Ultimately you'll have a whole bunch of control over it once you figure out the whole system. But in the in this editor you're going to have no control in this demo. So I could show you, let's see. So if I put another heading one in here and okay, so let's render this for a second. And so this, in this case, is just some HTML that's on this page with the arbitrary styles that I created there. And you can see that these styles are from are from Bootstrap, which is styling the whole site. And so it's not like I even wrote these styles in particular, but we could essentially override those styles and we could say that all the heading ones are going to be 14 pixels, which is going to be too small, 18 pixels. And we also want all of them to be red. So now you can see that I didn't have to like apply those styles to both of them individually. I just applied it to all the heading ones, and then they all magically follow that theme. And so we're not going to get super far into that today, but the whole point is to have that power. Okay, so headings are important for writing in academics and writing on the web. The other thing that's a good practice is to make your headings meaningful. I think a lot of folks, you just are like, you might say like a section that would be like info about library. And what's actually more helpful to people is if you really like use the headings to summarize the content. And so you can say like key points that make the library useful or something like that. I don't know. That's not a great example, but making your headings actually very meaningful and summarizing all of the content in your article makes it much easier for people to read and understand. And what we find from reading studies is that people actually skim through headings. And they also skim through your links. And so you want to make your links very meaningful as well. And that's how they read. And so the more engaging your article will be is if the headings actually are useful and meaningful. The next thing we want after our headings is we want to have some paragraphs, right? And anything that is just written on a line is going to become a paragraph. So we don't really need to do anything special to create a paragraph. There's nothing in front of it. There's nothing after it. And every paragraph will only break when there's a blank line of text or just a blank line in between it. So we're writing in a little text editor, plain text box here. We have a heading. We made a blank line. Now we just wrote some other lines, and you can see that I put a line break here, but there's not a blank line between these two lines. Those will be rejoined into a paragraph. So if I render that, you can see these two lines, even though there's a line break here, there's not an empty space between them. And so they become a single paragraph. And you can see here, I've got like 1, 2, 3, 5, 6 lines, but there's no blank lines in between them. And so when in rendered, it becomes just a paragraph. And so this is very useful for writing because you can start to actually kind of break up your paragraphs by the line rather than, if you write a very long paragraph of text and you start editing it, it can be a little bit harder to see like where you've moved things around. And so what I love about breaking up my writing like this is that I can go these line by line and it can be like, oh, well, this actually would be better at the start of the paragraph. And then I can do that using that line by line kind of look at that paragraph, which makes it easier than having to dig into that paragraph. Like, if you were imagining a much longer academic paragraph, where there's a little bit of separation in the source that I'm looking at, which helps me kind of version control it and collaborate with people where you kind of just move an individual line around and you haven't lost that line and you don't have to dig through a paragraph to like pull it out. So some people really like that. Some people are just really familiar with looking at it like you do in Microsoft Word, where it's all one line. And so you can also just make it all one line. There's no reason you don't have to break it up in any way either. It's just an option that you could do if you wanted to. And so this is going to render exactly the same way because there's no extra space in between those. Now, if we wanted this to be 2 paragraphs, we just put a blank line in between it. And now we have, 3 paragraphs here. So again, writing paragraphs, you just don't really need to think about it. You just start writing. The other thing that you'll probably want in your writing is some lists. And so how you create a list in Markdown is you just go to leave a blank line, and then start your list. You're going to have a dash or hyphen, whatever you want to call that character, space, and then the list item. So whatever you want to call it, so maybe this one is like this. And then what you want to do is make sure you have a blank line above it, a blank line below it, and it's going to render nicely like that. You can make sublists on there. So if we go here and we press tab, oh, that's not going to work on here, I guess. Sorry. All right, can't do this in this little editor because it's not fancy enough, but we could do it here. If we tab here and do a thing, sub item, you can see that it's created a sub item in my list. And so you can see that an example here that we've actually mixed ordered list and an unordered list, and it makes sub items for you. So the pattern there is that you can use, you started on a new line, you do a dash space. It has to have that dash space. If you don't put the space there and we render that, it's not going to turn into a list. If I put that space in there, suddenly it's going to become a list. You can actually use different characters if you want to. You can use asterisks or a plus sign. So some people just have different ways that they like it, that they prefer using a plus sign or an asterisk for their lists, but it would just be plus sign, asterisk, or that hyphen, space, and then your list item. The other kind of list that you could have is an ordered list. So an ordered list is where it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How you do that is you put a number, any number, a period, and a space, and then whatever it is you want. And so it's going to get renumbered automatically. So I'm going to show you that. So it's 1, 2 dogs. So I could put this to be 8 space, and then when I render it, it's going to ignore what that actual number I put in my source, and it's going to number it based on that actual element. So it's counting the things that are in this list, and it's going to number them up. So you can really put any number you want. I generally would put all of my numbers in order just because it's easier to look at. But if you ever are just trying to fix some document, you don't need to.
So, the core points are all like standard shapes, like dark circles and all that.
Wait, run that by one more time.
So, the bullet points, they are all standard shapes.
Oh, right.
Dark circles.
And so that's again going to be based on however you're going to output it. And so if you did it with LaTeX, it would be a certain kind of design, and that would be based on the template that you've applied to it. And so it's going to be, those are another thing that you're going to tweak on that style layer, but you don't tweak on the document layer.
So if I want major changes, I have to do it through the HTML.
Yeah, or the HTML or the LaTeX template that you apply to it. Yeah, so that's the same sort of thing. There's different ways, ultimately, like I can't do it in this. This is a very simple editor, but there is ways to add classes like HTML classes to your writing. And so I can show you that here really quick. But basically, like most HTML or most Markdown renders, we'll have to talk about that a little bit more. We'll support something, a syntax for adding some extra styling into the document. And so this one is called cram down, and this little syntax right here is like a way of adding an HTML class to whatever's above it. And so then this H1 would have an HTML class called extra big, and then you would be able to write the class extra big to be like, this is twice the size of the normal H1, etc. And so there's cases where, yeah, let's say you have this list and you, and then you have this other list, and for some reason, and the animal list had some special, like this animal list needed to have little dots that were animals or something, you would be able to apply that class because semantically that was important, that they were different than the other lists. And so it'd be like the animal list class. And so that implementation kind of depends on the Markdown flavor. And so we'll get to that in a little bit too. Okay. So we want to do some regular kind of highlighting of stuff inside of our text. And so I'm going to go back into my paragraph here. And let's say I want to make bold. How I add bold is I do 2 asterisks at the start of where I want it to be bold. And then I put 2 asterisks at the end of where I'm going to want it to be bold. So everything between the 2 asterisks at the start and the 2 asterisks at the end is going to become bold. So I'm going to do that. And so what that tag is actually called strong, which means like it's supposed to be strongly emphasized. And then if we want to make a italics, that's called emphasis. And we could do that by doing an underscore at the start and an underscore at the end. And so then if we render that, you're going to see that turned to italics right there. And so you can mix those if you wanted to. We can do this. And then I can render that. Oh, it didn't work. I have a space in here or something. And the other thing about that is you can actually use underscores or asterisks for either one. So that's the same. I like to separate them out so that I have I use my asterisks for bold, and I like to use my underscores for italics just to keep it straight in my own head. The other thing that we would probably want to add in, oh, go ahead. What's that? If you so italics is just one of them, and bold would be two of them. And so I could do this like 2 underscores to 2 underscores right here. And I render that. And you have to have an opening one and a closing one. And it'll be bold. I could replace that with 2 asterisks, and they have to be the matching. So I have to match the beginning and the end of them. Does that make sense? Okay. Does that answer what your question was there? Okay. Oh yeah, then you should be able to do both. I think my renderer is not working. Oh yeah, it is. Okay. So you can do both. And actually I think if you even put in just like 3, it'll just do that too. 3 of the same thing. Oh yeah, that works too. So basically, yeah, you can add both. You can even add it like inside of the other. So I could do this. I usually use the opposites. So you can see now this is bold, this is italic and bold, and that's regular bold. I usually use the opposite ones, just like I said, just so I can keep it straight in my head. And then the other thing that we want to do is probably add some links in our text. And so if I want to add a link, how I do that is I write the text that I want to be hyperlinked. I will write a square bracket, and then I'm going to write the text inside that hyperlink. So it'll be like and then I put a square bracket at the end of that. And then without any spaces, I put a parentheses. I'm just going to copy this link and I'm going to paste it there. And then I'm going to end that parentheses like this, close it. So if I do that, now this is going to be a hyperlink, right? And I could click on that to go there. And so that's what you would do if you're writing anywhere in your text, square bracket, close the square bracket, parentheses, link, close that parentheses. And if I render that, you can see that now there's a hyperlink in my text. So the other thing about links is when we write on the web, when we write in the digital world, people's eyes actually jump to your links. And so a practice used to be to say, to do this, and you'll still see this all over the web, click here. And that's actually a pretty poor practice because people don't read the paragraph. Their eyes jump to this link. And for people who are using screen readers, they also navigate jumping to links. And so this click here doesn't provide you any context for where that link is going. And so you want to replace all your click here's with, rather than saying, like for more info, click here. What you want to say is for more info, visit and then we're going to replace that with descriptive text. So visit the workshop page like that. And so now that's actually going to be a much more readable and usable sentence than or link than click here. Okay, so there's more to that, but I'm just going to jump ahead now to just, you can walk through this and you can learn the footnotes and how to add an image, how to add some code blocks and things like that, and tables. But I'm going to jump ahead here to talking about Markdown flavors and then previewing what you can do with Pandoc, just for the sake of time. So Markdown flavors, this is just important to know once you get started, is that Markdown isn't a very formal standard, and it comes in flavors, which are the different implementations, the pieces of software that are used to convert that Markdown that you wrote into something else. And so each of those implementations has different features that they support. So the ones that are on here are all kind of the standard ones that everybody supports, following the standard kind of conventions. But once you actually have some tool that you're using to convert it, like Pandoc or RStudio, there's specific things that their implementations will support to make it more usable or more complicated. And so you want to kind of know what your flavor is. I kind of covered this, but here's some more notes about that accessibility that I've been kind of talking about here. So the idea is we're going to write our documents, our notes in our Markdown, and then we're going to use some kind of tool to convert that into other kinds of formats that you need either to submit your articles or share or print, etc. And so the tool that I like to use is called Pandoc, which is the Universal Document Converter. It's a really kind of academic sort of tool, and it's been around for a long time. And he has this visualization that shows you all the different formats that you could convert from and to, and the different ways that you could do it. But it is a really powerful tool. And we're not going to walk through the installation and stuff right now, but I just want to show you what it looks like to actually use that. So I'm going to just download this file, and I'm going to save it, I guess, in my download file. And so you can see this is just some Markdown plain text with a bunch of example stuff. And to actually use your Pandoc, you would go follow the instructions to install it on your computer. And it's a command line program. So we need to actually open a terminal to do that. On Windows, it would be called PowerShell or CMD, or if you've installed Git, you'll have Git Bash available, which is probably the best option. On Mac, it's just going to be called Terminal, and on Linux, it's going to be called Terminal. So I have my terminal here, and I opened it up. Make it big. And so right now, my terminal is showing me that I'm just in my home directory, and what I want to do is go to where that file is. So I'm going to CD into downloads, which is where I just downloaded it. And then what I need to do is I'm going to use Pandoc, and I'm going to see if I have it. So when you use things on the terminal, you start by giving the piece of software that you're going to use. So in this case, Pandoc, and then you give it that piece of software, you give it commands. So I'm going to give it the command version, -- version. Oh, it doesn't like that. Is that what I said to do? Did I spell it wrong? Oh yeah, that's not spelled correctly. That's not how you spell version. So I did Pandoc -v, and it told me what version of Pandoc I have, and just some extra information. So what I want to do now is I want to convert that demo file that I have into, I'm going to open it into a docx file or a open office document. I'm going to do it open office because I don't have Microsoft on my computer. So I'm going to follow this command. And so what I do is I go Pandoc, piece of software I want to use. I'm going to give it the input file. And so that file is what I downloaded, markdown-demo.md. I'm going to tell it what I want to output. So I say -o for output. And then I'm going to use that same file name, but I'm going to remove the .md, and I'm going to just change it to whatever extension I want. So I want it to be DT for open document. So that would be what you use in LibreOffice. And I just press enter to give that command. And then it tried to convert it, and it did, but it gave me some kind of warning. So we'll go see what it looks like. My downloads here. And so this is the Markdown file that I started with. I can open that on my computer with a text editor. And then it exported it here as an Office document. And if I click that, see if I have, I did. My LibreOffice is not opening. Oh, there it is. Great. So in this case, it converted it into a document, and then I could use this to, if I wanted to, do some inline formatting to finish it off. And you can see that it's nice because this is actually marked up in my correctly in this Office document. When you create a document, you can use the headings in Microsoft Word or in LibreOffice to actually mark these as headings. And so it's automatically done that for me. And it's automatically added all of these numbered lists and all this stuff in the correct way, and added this footnote in the correct way. And so this is a very usable document that I could use to create a PDF that's accessible. It can't find this image because I didn't actually download the image. It was linked to the web, and so it didn't automatically convert it for me. There is ways to make it do that, but I'm not going to jump into that right now. And so you can see that this is a really quick way to create the document format that I wanted to, that I have to submit to somebody. Whereas I didn't have to spend a bunch of time in that piece of software writing it. You could do the same thing with DocX, obviously, and you could create it, output it as HTML instead. So we can see what that looks like as a web page. So it exported it as a web page for me. Just there's no styling on this web page. It's just the default styling. And so then I could add this and add styles to it to make it look how I wanted to. Or I could create a PDF using LaTeX. So I can do this, let's see if that works. Okay. It doesn't like the image, so I'm just going to go debug that for a second. I'm going to remove this image for now. Okay, and now we can see what this PDF looks like. And so here's a really nice LaTeX PDF using just whatever the standard styles were. So if I wanted to add more, if I knew LaTeX and I have some packages installed, you can see I'll talk a little bit further down here about ways that you can actually modify all of the styles and templates that are being used, how you can add some more data to those documents so that LaTeX knows what to do with it and how to style it. And then the other really useful thing is being able to put your math equations directly in your Markdown and have it rendered into your HTML or your PDFs. So I'm just going to wrap it up, and then we can have more questions and just kind of be informal after that. And there's just a bunch of resources here for some more tutorials and reference. These are the kind of tools that you might want to use. And sort of publishing workflows. All these note-taking apps use Markdown. And then this would be important to look at and think about for when you're making content for your courses, because as I said, you need to kind of, you need to meet all the PDF accessibility, and LaTeX currently isn't really doing that. And so there's some ways to get around that and create good accessible docs to put into the learning management system and share with your students. Okay, and so that's kind of the really quick and overview of all the things you might want to do with Markdown and the tiny preview of what you can do with Pandoc. And so, yeah, thanks for joining, and I'm going to sit around and answer questions if anyone has any. In the room or online? Does anyone currently write with LaTeX? What field are you in? What field are you in? Physics, yeah. So that's pretty common.
So it's very, very marvelous for pushing from a table.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, or like the only way, really. So yeah, you can just literally put LaTeX equations into your Markdown, and so it's kind of like sort of simplifying the writing to some degree, and then having those LaTeX equations, and then essentially going to use LaTeX to render it ultimately. But the nice thing about using Pandoc would be generating the HTML version, and there's a tag to say standalone, and it makes it a completely standalone thing, and that will render the equations using MathML, which is actually an accessible, meets accessibility requirements. So you can put that into, you can put it on the web, you can put it into the learning management system, and it's actually pretty good. So there's just, so personally, like I don't spend a lot of time writing directly in LaTeX because it's kind of harder to look at in some ways. And then, so that's kind of how I like to do it, is like keep my LaTeX very simple in the header of my Markdown document and keep those templates separate, and then write Markdown to write my simple stuff, and then use LaTeX to convert it into PDFs.
Okay, so I keep hearing the word like Pandoc. Is it related to pandas in a way?
Is it like what?
Pandoc.
Pandoc is what I'm trying to say, yeah.
Is it related to pandas?
No. So Pandas is the Python platform for working with data, and Pandoc is just that document conversion, format conversion tool. And so both academic tools that people like a lot, but yeah, hard for me to say it clearly. Yeah, Pandoc is just a really interesting niche tool that people use. It's not the only one that can do that sort of thing, but essentially it's going to harness LaTeX and a bunch of other tools to generate your outputs and kind of simplify that workflow of converting things. And so it can be really powerful to learn about. You can write in Markdown and then generate PowerPoint from it. You can do all kinds of things like that. And so it's if you spend a little time on it, it'll be rewarding to kind of be able to simplify your workflows if you like doing that sort of thing. Some people just don't like opening the command line ever. And there's actually Pandoc does have like a where is it? Little online version. If you ever just need to like convert some, you can actually upload some examples somewhere here. And if you ever just need to like, I just need to create a HTML page from this, physics equation because I need to put it into learning management system and meet the accessibility requirements. There's people that just do this, get that file, put it on there and convert it. You don't have to install anything and it works. A lot of the note-taking tools out there nowadays have all of that stuff kind of built into it. And so the really common one that a lot of people are using these days is Obsidian note-taking. And so it has a kind of advanced Markdown that it supports. It can generate links in between all your notes, and people have built all kinds of plugins for it to do all kinds of different things that are interesting. And so personally, I have a note-taking practice where I write all of my articles and all of my to-do lists and notes about all the projects that I'm working on in one giant folder of stuff, all in Markdown. And it's been actually really powerful for me because then I can always just open my text editor and search all of that content to find various things that I'm working on and remind myself what I was doing. And somebody's always like, well, what is that thing that we were supposed to do 2 years ago? And I'm like, oh, well, I'll have to search. And then I find it. And that's been really powerful, just having all of my scholarship notes and work notes all in one place where I can kind of search that plain text to be able to find information about what I've been doing. So that's another note-taking practice. We've had some people give some workshops on that before, which are pretty interesting. So.
Like a general question.
Yeah.
At the end of the workshop series, would there be some form of certification to show the?
Ooh, yeah, you could ask Hanwin about that. We have done that before, but we haven't done that this last couple of years, maybe.
No, we haven't. Yeah, certification, what kind of, you just like you attended how many workshops and like,
Yep,
kind of like a
that's-
recommendation?
Yep, and then the customers.
Yeah.
Then
So we used to have on campus a sort of learning, what do they call it? Basically, like a learning certificate tracking system. And so I used to send those in to get them officially added to your records, certifying that you went to workshops. We haven't done that last couple of years, and we'd have to look in if they have it. But if it's useful for you, email us, and we could definitely come up with a way to do it. Because yeah, for some folks, it's kind of helpful to just have something saying that you've attended stuff. So thanks for bringing it up. Any questions online, folks? All right, well, thanks for tuning in, and you'll have the website will be up as a permanent resource, and feel free to get in touch with any questions that you encounter, and happy to talk more. So thank you.